Hi everyone, it's Katrina. From the Navy chasing down mysterious craft to an object hovering around an airport, here are 8 UFO stories that you've probably never heard of. Number 8. The Navy and the Unidentified Craft. It's a well-documented fact that the first modern sighting of a UFO was done by a pilot in the state of Washington well before Roswell. However, while you would think that the military would be one of the last people nowadays to report a sighting, that's not actually true, and an incident in 2004 can prove it. 2 Navy pilots, Commander David Fravor and Lieutenant Commander Jim Slate, were just doing their jobs and flying across the ocean in standard routes. But then they got a message from their team back at base. There was an unidentified craft near them, and they were asked to go investigate. Turns out the Navy had not only spotted this ship, it had been around the coast of San Diego for some time. But this was the only time they had other pilots available to try and figure out what it was. When the 2 pilots found it, they were in for quite a sight. One of them noted that it was about 40 feet long, and it wasn't a ship, it was something hovering over the water. The pilots went lower to try and get a better look at it, but seemingly sensing their presence, the craft rose up into the air and blasted off with incredible speed, more than the pilots could keep up with. Shaken in more ways than one, the 2 returned to base. One of them claimed on record that he didn't feel that the craft was from Earth. Number 7. D.S. Sonny, Duverger, and the Scouts. One common thread among UFO encounter stories is that they are often spotted by people who randomly investigate things that don't look right, such as Scoutmaster D.S. Sonny DesVergers. For in 1952, he was driving some scouts around in South Florida when suddenly he saw some lights going into the nearby trees in West Palm Beach. Concerned that it might be a fallen craft with people in it, Sonny grabbed a machete and a flashlight and made out to see what was going on. He left instructions for the scouts that if he hadn't returned in 15 minutes, that they were to call the police. After a few minutes, he came upon something that he called a ship, one that was pure black and had no seams on it. He also noted a weird smell coming from the object and the feeling that he was being watched. A light came out from a hatch in the ship and then went towards him. The light soon became a mist and enveloped him. When it did, he blacked out. When Sonny awoke, he could tell instantly that something was wrong. His eyes burned, part of his skin was burned too, and he was having trouble speaking. He found his way back to the car where the 3 scouts were waiting with the police in tow. He had been gone for over an hour. The officers examined him and found numerous burns all over his body, including some on his hat. Eventually, the whole incident would be labeled as a hoax, but some haven't believed that, especially since the military investigators who were called in to see the incident for themselves actually never proved that the event was a hoax in the first place. Not to mention the police and military took samples of the area near where the crash happened. What they found was charred grass, but not just on top of the grass but in the roots as well, which are actually hard to burn on ground level. According to scientists, the only way that this could be faked is if someone burned the grass at 300 degrees, which Sonny clearly didn't have time to do. Why would you go to the trouble of faking something like this, they noted. Why and how would he stage that? It doesn't make any sense. What's more, the scouts themselves admitted that they saw the light that crashed into the ground, which triggered the whole event. And they were clearly not in on the hoax, as they were all less than 12 and didn't play a big part in things. So if this was a hoax, how and why did the Scoutmaster do it? How did he burn himself in the grass? No one really knows, and that's what makes this a compelling case. Number 6. Planes and the UFO. Flying is the safest form of transportation, believe it or not, and many find the view at those heights very soothing and relaxing. Not so for 2 aircraft pilots during routine flights over Arizona earlier this year, 2018. The incident in question happened first with a Learjet 36. A pilot was flying the craft over Arizona when he noticed something that shouldn't be there: another aircraft. Said craft flew right over his plane at fast speeds, stunning the pilot and making him confused as to what had just happened. Following protocol, he radioed into his control tower and asked if they had picked up any activity over his plane. The controller noted that they hadn't, then unwisely made a joke about the incident being a UFO. The pilot wasn't buying the explanation and actually radioed another pilot of a plane that he knew was nearby. He asked the pilot to let him know if any aircraft came near his plane. Sure enough, a little while later, one did. The other pilot even described the craft, stating that it had a glow that made the whole plane shine. Not to mention, this craft was incredibly fast. So what did they see? These were 2 experienced pilots, so they know the difference between a plane and something else. It was later believed that they saw balloons flying by, but balloons wouldn't move that fast and they don't glow that brightly. The pilots truly believe that they saw a UFO. Number 5. First sighting in America. While it is true that the modern age of UFO sightings happened in the 1900s, the first sighting in America of UFOs happened in 1639. Granted, this was not a first-hand sighting. In fact, it's noted that the writer of this tale, John Winthrop, recorded the tale after hearing it from a man he believed to be trustworthy. The man was named James Everell, and Winthrop described him as a sober, discreet man, which makes the story more credible as he wasn't a man to tell tales. According to Everell's recollection, he and some mates were rowing a boat along the Mandy River when they saw something in the sky. It was a craft unlike anything they had ever seen. When it stood still, it flamed up and was about 3 yards square. When it ran, it was contracted into the figure of a swine. It ran as swift as an arrow towards Charlton and so up and down about 2 or 3 hours. A standard sighting? Not so much. When the craft disappeared from their view, they all found that they were 1 mile upstream, as in not going with the current of the river, but none of them knew exactly how they'd gotten to that point. It should also be noted that John Winthrop was the co-founder of the Massachusetts Bay Colony, and thus was a very respected man. Also of note is that since this was the first sighting of UFOs in colonial United States, there were no stories to be shared about such experiences. So what do you think Everell and his mates saw? Number 4. Astronaut? Many people see UFOs, and while many of them aren't credible for one reason or another, others are at the very least credible by reputation, such as what happened in 2013 with a former pilot and astronaut. The man chose to remain anonymous, but his sighting was documented. He was in Athens, Texas when he saw something in the sky. He says, "When I looked up into the sky, I saw a fairly large orange glowing orb moving rapidly overhead at right about 90 degrees of elevation. After a few minutes, more lights came into the fold, and then even more lights came. The man watched as they danced across the sky. His family came out and joined him as he looked at the objects. All attempts to take pictures or record them failed." Anonymous claimed that the objects moved much faster than orbital satellites or airplanes, but much slower than meteors, and did not change brightness as a meteor would upon entering the atmosphere. He says he has no explanation for what they saw. What do you think it was? Let me know in the comments below. Number 3. Trudel sighting. There have been many pictures taken of UFOs over the years, but one of the most famous and infamous of them all are pictures taken by Harold Trudel on June 10, 1967. Trudel was a longtime believer in UFOs and has claimed to have seen them multiple times before he took these legendary pictures. One day he was on the West Wrentham Road near the city of East Woonsocket, Rhode Island. As he waited, an alien craft appeared and he took pictures of what he saw. Given the age of the camera, it would be impossible to doctor the photos in any meaningful way. Because of this, it stands as one of the biggest pieces of evidence that aliens do exist. If this isn't an alien craft, what is it? Number 2. Square craft. In North Carolina, there is a man named Javion Hill. On August 18, 2018, Hill's life was changed forever. He was driving in Charlotte, North Carolina on US 74, talking to his wife on the phone when he spotted something he couldn't explain. There were lights in the sky, but more than that, these lights had a shape to them that made it look like no other craft he'd ever seen. The lights around this object gave the craft a very square shape. Knowing he had to do something, he took pictures of the craft. He even made an attempt to make a video of it, but as soon as he tried, the craft vanished. Just as odd, Hill noted that after the craft disappeared, a storm came around. Before the encounter, Hill wasn't a believer in aliens. Now, he was pretty worried for his safety and said that from that moment on, he believed in UFOs. Do you? Number 1. Gatecrasher. In Chicago, Illinois in 2006, there was a sighting of a UFO that got the attention of many at the airport. This craft wasn't in the sky or floating around the airport proper. Rather, it was staged at Gate C-17. This was first spotted by a person on the tarmac at O'Hare, but as time went on, more and more people started to see the craft too. It clearly wasn't an airplane, and it just hovered over the gate for a long time, several minutes in fact. But then, just as suddenly as it arrived, it blasted off into the sky. Witnesses claim that it actually left a hole in the clouds as it dashed off. The radar of the airport says no alien craft was present, and the FAA refused to investigate. But what the heck was it? Thanks for watching! Do you have any of your own UFO stories? Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye! Bye, everyone!